Hello everyone, welcome to CyberScoop TV. Greg Otto, your editor-in-chief here. We're coming to you from the floor of the 2019 RSA conference, and I'm talking with Howard Marshall, the Director of Cyber Threat Intelligence for Accenture. Howard, thanks for joining us.
Hey Greg, good to be here. Thanks for having me.
So, Accenture just released some really interesting research about a new threat. Looks to be China-based. Tell us a little more about it.
Yeah, so the group we've been monitoring, we refer to internally as MUDCARP. It's a group of hackers based in China that have clearly targeted American universities and research shops that are responsible for doing a lot of work for the DIB, the Defense Industrial Base.
Okay.
They do a lot of research into various elements that somehow either support those DIB members directly,
okay,
or to the DoD.
Okay, so this looks to be a little bit of the best of both worlds from an espionage standpoint and an intellectual property standpoint, which we know China does both. So that just seems so interesting that they've seemingly found the right target when it comes to aligning with both of their goals.
Sure, well these groups are obviously persistent. They're constantly looking for weak points in supply chains. And you're right, in this case they found them. And not only that, but there's also this inherent environment in academic institutions of sharing. Peer review, constant research, that cycle is also a place where folks can find a point of weakness, and in this case they did.
So your background is with the federal government. You spent years at the FBI, and we've seen over the past, I'm going to say 12, 18 months, a lot of indictments going toward international hackers that are tied to various nation states. And there's really been a discussion as to whether this is the best strategy for the US government, sort of a naming and shaming when it comes to finding hackers. Can you talk about that a little bit and give us some insight on the strategy there?
Sure, so the strategy is much more complex than I think people try to make it in a small soundbite. It's an entire process that involves really, it's a whole of government approach, right? So all of the tools that we have as investigators are part of a larger toolkit that the USG has. So when they approach these problems, they basically look at what it is, where its impact is, and what we can do about it, right? So from an FBI perspective, that's what we do. We indict people, we bring them into the US justice system for prosecution, put them on trial. If we carry the day, we prove beyond a reasonable doubt they're guilty, they go to penitentiary. But that's not always the best solution, right? In some instances, we have a bigger intel mission, so we're gathering intelligence, and so maybe we don't move on an adversary even though we see them. In some instances, we might have conversations at the National Security Council level about an offensive operation, and some of those have been made public in the last couple of years.
Right.
But it's a process of working through all of those different tools that everybody brings to bear and determining, do we have visibility on this adversary from some other place? If we take down this infrastructure, will we still be able to see them operating? If we do the name and shame thing, what are we hoping to get out of that? Will we see a slow, a deceleration of activity, or is it just to show the world what it is that they're doing? What's the bigger issue? So it's a more thoughtful, more deliberative process. I know since I've left the government, PPD 20, which used to kind of govern this process, has changed. It's classified, so I don't know what it is anymore, but my understanding is the attempt was to maybe streamline that process so we had quicker decisions, and I don't know that anybody would say that's a bad thing, but as long as they're reasonably informed and everybody's bringing their tools to bear on the problem, I think it's absolutely reasonable.
So let's dive deeper into something that you mentioned there, sort of weighing the intel that goes into this, particularly the North Korean indictment. It was a deeply technical indictment. There was a lot there from a technical perspective. What are the conversations like when you're weighing that? Because I imagine if you're putting out technical indicators, there is always running that risk of burning maybe an intel operation, or maybe sitting on something that you want to gather as much intelligence as possible. So can you give a little bit more insight onto weighing the process of whether it's worth going public or sitting on for a few more months to gather more intel?
So again, complex solution, right? It's not a one-size-fits-all. It's a matter of determining what's the adversary doing. What are they stealing? Are we talking about highly classified information about weapon systems, or are we talking about research that's on the periphery? Do we have visibility on the adversary in some other place? Do we, what capabilities are we identifying to the enemy, the adversary, if we indict them? And you mentioned the North Korea indictment and how much technical information went into it. We've got to be careful with what goes into those indictments, because there are certainly tools and techniques that the government has that they don't want to share. But some of this intelligence, some of this information can only be gathered in a handful of ways. And if the adversary knows we can do that, they're liable to change their TTP.
Right.
So it's a very delicate balance of making that determination about what do we hope to get out of it, what are we trying to prevent. There's a process to it.
Great. Howard, really appreciate you giving some insight into that delicate balance. Thank you for joining us.
Great, thanks for the time, Greg.
For all of our videos, check out our YouTube channel, and for more on RSA and all things cybersecurity, check out cyberscoop.com. I'm Greg Otto, thanks for watching.